Hello and welcome to another edition of Your Future, Your Choice. I'm Emmanuel Romanis, your host. Today we're going to focus on the skilled trades, and joining me a little bit later on is going to be Jason Fink, the Executive Director of the Builders Guild of Western Pennsylvania. When I was 14 years old, which seems about 100 years ago, I helped my father break down and put together the engine in our 1968 Rebel American Motors car, which no longer exists, but that was a big company back then. And it was surprisingly simple. We did it in a weekend because back in those days, there was really nothing to an engine. We literally broke down the whole thing and laid it out in our driveway and just remembered how we took things apart and put them back together in the opposite order. And as I said, my dad and I did it in a weekend. Today, I'm afraid to change my own oil. The technology is so sophisticated. Mechanics today, they need a PhD just to hook up the monitoring system to find out what's going on with the engine. Technology has changed, the skill set has changed, and because of that, there seems to be a lack or a disconnect between employers and employees as far as the skills that are required for machinists, for carpenters, for electricians, the skilled trades. There is a great need for these people, a great need for this type of work. Infrastructure in America is falling apart. So the work is there, the money is there, but there seems to be, again, a disconnect between what employers need and what people coming out of high school, typically coming out of high school, have. And the biggest thing that I hear going around and speaking to industry leaders, union leaders, people within the different colleges and trade schools is advanced math skills, even basic math skills, but advanced math skills are greatly lacking, and it just seems to be a big problem of why we can't fill these proper jobs because we don't have the people that have the math skills needed for that. So we're going to talk about that with Jason Fink a little bit later on. Let me just throw out a quick survey here. A recent Adecco USA telephone survey of 500 top executives. 92% of those executives identified a relevant skill set that applicants lacked. So it is a very real concern and something that certainly needs to be addressed by all parties. So stick around and we'll be right back to talk more with Jason Fink. Now is Jason Fink, the Executive Director of the Builders Guild of Western Pennsylvania. Jason, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
First off, I want to kind of explore with you, because you're in the thick of things of how this is working out there, of the disconnect that we hear about between employers and employees. There was a report that I read, the most recent Skills Gap report conducted by the Manufacturing Institute down in Washington, D.C., and they found that over 600,000 jobs were open in manufacturing because companies were unable to find qualified applicants. So, based on your experience, like I said, you're in the thick of things here. Are you seeing that closing at all, or is there still a gap between what employers are looking for in the skilled trades and the skill level that these people actually have?
I would say that we're basically finding qualified folks. We don't probably have as much of a problem as other industries do, surprisingly, in construction. Although I will say the applications to our joint apprenticeship schools, and that's how you really can get into the building trade unions in this area, is go through a joint apprenticeship training center. The applications are down a little bit, so we're not getting as many applicants as we used to, but we're still getting more than we need right now. But to me, the pool can never be deep enough. I mean, you want to get the best applicants you can. So, you know, there are certain things that we certainly look for in terms of candidates. Having the math skills is probably the toughest thing for some kids, particularly people that come been out of high school for a while.
Okay.
You know, the average age of our apprentice is 27 years old. So obviously we're getting folks in their 30s and 40s that are coming to us to start a career in construction. Those folks have been out of school for a while, so math is a problem a little bit sometimes for them. And it's algebra, and it's using fractions and multiplying fractions, and those are things that people don't, you know, it's like a foreign language. You don't use it, you can forget the formulas and whatnot.
Right.
So we need folks with good math skills. We need folks that have good discipline, for example, that we know are going to show up for work every day. It's really critical in the construction industry.
Okay.
Our biggest obstacle is really probably convincing high schools and parents to look at the building trades as career opportunities, as terrific career opportunities. You know, there's the stigma that if you don't go to college today, you're not going to be successful. And that clearly isn't the case with the building trades. You don't need to go to college to get a career in construction, but you do need more education. You know, you don't just pick up a hammer and call yourself a carpenter. I mean, I do, but I mean, others they don't.
Not like the old days.
No. I mean, you need a lot of training, and that's what our joint apprenticeship schools are all about. You know, we have 17 of them here in Western Pennsylvania. Each of the trades, whether you're a carpenter, electrician, plumber, cement mason, sheet metal worker, boiler maker, I mean, there's a host of different occupations that make up construction. You're not just a construction worker. But each of them have their own schools, 17 of them. They're absolutely fantastic. But they're terrific programs, and they're like college. I mean, they're 3 to 5 years in length.
Right.
You actually do get college credits as you go through them, but they're not called a college.
Okay.
And I think that's part of our problem, is that, again, gee, we can't just go to a trade school or a joint apprenticeship school. That's not going to be a successful career.
Right.
Well, in fact, only about 5% of college graduates make more money than people in the building trades. I mean, it pays that well. We're talking $50 to $60 an hour.
Wow.
When you get through the apprenticeship training programs, is with your benefit package is essentially what you're earning. So, you know, it is a great opportunity, but we tend to, I think high schools tend to gauge their success by how many of their students go to college.
Sure.
Not how many complete college,
Right.
not how many, you know, get a job after college,
Right.
but, you know, how many went to college. And I think we need to start looking at things a little differently as a society in terms of where the job's going to be, where the good job's going to be, particularly those family-sustaining careers, and construction is one of those places.
Have you noticed, and I know policy is a big part of this, there's been reports, for the last several years, how the American infrastructure is just in such decline and in need of repair. And obviously, as I said, it's a policy issue where Congress needs to put up the funding first before anything can happen. But have you seen any movement on the policy end as far as trying to get that money and to really build up the skilled trades? Because, as you said, there are good jobs, good paying jobs, and if the policy ever comes through, there's going to be a lot of work for years to come just with basic infrastructure. Are you seeing any movement on that end, or is it still what we hear in the news and the talking points, a true stalemate?
Well, we're finally seeing, we saw some action certainly at the state level, with the state finally passing a transportation package last year, and that's going to have a significant impact on construction opportunities for heavy and highway construction type of careers. Operating engineers, heavy equipment operators, laborers, carpenters. I mean, there's so many jobs affiliated with road construction. So from the state level, yeah, we've now seen the investment. The state is finally making the investment to repair our roads and bridges, and we certainly know how badly our bridges problems are in Pennsylvania. National level is another problem. I mean, as you just said, there is a real stalemate in Washington. For political reasons, probably more than anything, and we certainly need to get a new surface transportation bill passed in Washington. Is it going to happen? Boy, your guess is as good as mine. And if it does happen, you know, how long is it going to be? I mean, it used to be you'd have a 6-year transportation program. You know, now they're all stopgap measures for 6 months, for a year. You know, you really need a long-term investment to make a difference. And for us, as the building trades, you know, we need to plan ahead. We only take in as many apprentices each year as we know we can put to work.
Okay.
And so, you know, when you don't have that long-term commitment, it's hard for us to make a a good estimate as to how many men and women, because this isn't just a career for men,
Sure.
but how many men and women we're going to need over the next year, 2, 3, 4 years. So we need to see more investment in highway funding at the federal level. Other than that, things aren't too bad. About 8 years ago, in the building trades locally, we were taking in about 1,000 apprentices a year.
Okay.
For the 17 schools. Now that was when we were building in the Pittsburgh area, the Consol Energy Center,
Right.
Children's Hospital, huge, very large jobs.
Right.
The economy went in the tank, as we all know, and construction slows down. But we still took in about 400, 450, but it was cut in half. Now the last 3 years, it's picked back up.
Okay.
So this year we'll be taking in probably about 800 apprentices, and I see that continuing and maybe even increasing over the next several years. A lot of that is not just because of highway funding is finally picking up, it's because of the natural gas industry.
Okay.
The whole Marcellus and Utica shale formations and what's that meant in terms of drilling and the building of compressor stations and refineries and whatnot, that's having a significant impact. Certainly the state is trying to make that easier for companies to come in here, but there's obviously a lot of controversy in terms of the fracking
Sure.
procedures
Sure.
and whatnot, and so those are policy issues that, again, I don't know how that's going to play out. You've got a new governor coming in who does talk about putting impact fees on the gas companies. Is that going to slow down production? If in fact that does happen, if Governor Corbett stays in office, what's his position going to be? I mean, those are policy issues that have an impact on the number of jobs that are going to be coming down the road. And we've been talking and hearing a lot about this cracker plant in Monaca,
Right.
in Beaver County,
Right.
that Shell Oil was talking about building and has been and looking at it for the last several years, doing their due diligence. And if that project happens, and I think we're still probably until the first quarter of 2015 before a decision is made on that. But if that project happens, I mean, we're talking about a need for construction workers that we haven't seen in Western Pennsylvania in many, 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 many years. I mean, this plant is absolutely enormous. It's larger than any steel plant that was ever built in Pittsburgh. I mean, this could have more of an impact than even steel had in Pittsburgh, because the plant itself is one large facility, but it's the spin-off jobs that creates
Okay.
in terms of other manufacturing that begins, whether it's the plastics industry or whatnot. So, we're keeping our fingers crossed, but that could have a huge impact down the road. And if that happens, I mean, that project alone, the estimates are anywhere from 8,000 to 10,000 construction jobs just for
Wow.
that one
That's
project.
phenomenal.
Yeah. So the opportunity. That's why I say we go out to the high schools and we talk to the kids about their future. They need to think about the
Right.
building trades, where you're going to learn a skill that can't be outsourced.
Right. That's right.
You can't build that plant overseas and bring it over here. So, you can't outsource. The jobs are going to be there. They're going to be good paying jobs. But it's not for everybody.
Right.
And we haven't talked about the Builders Guild as an organization, but this is a very unique initiative that started here about 1997.
Well, expand on that since
Well,
you brought it up.
Yeah. In 1997, the Builders Guild was formed, and it's a very unique labor management initiative where contractors basically, they went to the unions years ago and formed this partnership saying, look, as a contractor, we don't know how successful we're going to be on bidding any particular project on any given year. So it's hard for us to maintain a certain workforce not knowing whether we're going to have jobs or not for
Right.
them. So, what they partnered with the union saying, you go out and you find me the best people you can, and you train them to a standard that I know that when I need somebody for my job, I don't have to sit down and spoon feed them on what to do.
Right.
They're going to be able to look at a blueprint. They're going to know how to do the job safely, get it done on time, on budget, et cetera, et cetera. And if you do that, we'll jointly going to pay for these schools. We'll pay for their training, and I will then compensate them with a very good wage and benefit package.
Okay.
But you go out, you recruit them, and you train them.
Okay.
So that's the partnership that was formed, and clearly they recognized here in West Pennsylvania that they need each other.
Right.
The unions, they serve their customers, who are the contractors.
Sure.
The contractors are the employers, not the unions. So these are private sector unions, which are different than public sector unions. I don't know if we'll touch on that or not, but there is a large difference between various types of unions. So these are private sector unions. They realize that their success hinges on their contractors being successful. So they got together and said, how can we work together on a regular basis? And they decided to form this Builders Guild. and it basically consists of all 17 building trade unions, and then the various contractor associations. So the general contractors, they have an association, the Master Builders Association of Western Pennsylvania. The electrical contractors have an association. The iron workers have an association. The sheet metal workers have an association. The mechanical contractors, they all have their own associations.
Okay.
So they all got together and said, let's work together. And they formed this guild, and it's been going strong for 15 or 16 years. And we meet every month and basically sit down and talk about, what do we have, what needs to be worked on.
Okay.
If anyone has gone not towards the airport recently or Robinson Township, you can see the Carpenter's new training center up on the hillside.
It's a very impressive building.
It is probably the nicest and best training center in the country right now to be trained as a carpenter. It's a $14 million complex, 93,000 square feet. I mean, it is really state-of-the-art.
Now, how many students can you accommodate at any one time?
Well, the carpenters, their program is a 4-year apprenticeship program.
Okay.
Now, I should say that all these apprenticeship programs, first of all, they're tuition-free.
All right.
There's no cost to get trained at a joint apprenticeship school, which is another message we try to get out to the parents. You're not going to have any tuition for your children.
Right.
They're also getting paid. The apprentices get paid as they go through them, because most of the training is on the job.
Okay.
In fact, the schools, the students are only going to be in the schools about 4 to 5 weeks a year for 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
Each of the trades, some of the trades are 3-year programs, some are 4, some are 5. But just 4 years an average, like college.
Okay.
But they're going to be out in the field most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time they're going to be out in the field on a job site, and they're getting paid.
Okay.
So not only are they getting a free education, they're going to get paid as they go through it, because most of their training is going to be on the job, supplemented throughout the year with occasional classroom training. So immediately what they learn in the classroom, they're going to apply in the field.
Right.
It's the best way to learn.
Absolutely.
I mean, anyone who's tried to learn a computer, and you go to school and they teach you, and then you leave, and if you don't use the computer, you forget immediately.
Right. Right.
Well, that's why we want to supplement it and immediately apply what you learn in the schools. But
now, is the prerequisite to get into that program a GED or high school diploma?
There's basically five requirements to get in. You have to be 18 years old. Now, you can be 17 for the carpenters and sheet metal workers, but essentially you have to be 18 years old.
All right.
You do have to have your high school diploma or a GED, although in most cases seniors can apply. So even though they may not have graduated yet, they can still apply in the senior year. You have to have and this stops a lot of young men and women now in the city, it seems, but you have to have a valid Pennsylvania driver's license.
Okay.
And it's amazing how many kids today don't get their driver's license right away. And in the city, that seems to be a real problem for us. The city doesn't teach driver's ed anymore, and there's a whole issue there. But, but anyway, you have to have a valid driver's license. Basically, you're going to have a car.
Right.
Because
that makes sense.
This is an industry where you're going to be moving around, and you have to be drug-free.
Okay.
So those are the 5 requirements to apply to any school. One thing we've done is we've worked very closely with the Community College of Allegheny County, so with CCAC, and they've actually developed a course strictly on building trades math.
Okay.
So, trying to prepare, again, I say kids, but this is for anybody.
Right.
I mean, you could apply if you want.
Sure.
At this point.
I just may. It sounds pretty good.
But, I mean, anybody can go to the CCAC. They charge, I think it's $99 for this class. But it is specifically to take our aptitude tests and do well on them.
Okay.
So, there are ways to get those math skills up. I tell the kids all the time, we're going to get your transcripts and we're going to look at your grades.
Right.
Those will be important, but the most important thing on that transcript isn't going to be the grades. It's going to be their attendance record. And I can't tell juniors and seniors in particular how important that is, because as you know, I mean, the demand for jobs is very competitive.
Right.
And the slightest little advantage, I mean, every little advantage you can get can be the difference in your life.
And it's basic common sense, and I've talked about this before in other programs. Be on time, show up for work every day, go above and beyond. It's just basic common sense.
Yeah, but kids that come out of high school aren't going to have much of a work experience.
Right.
So it's hard for us to know whether they will show up on time and the whole thing. So that's why I say, particularly when you're a senior, those days you get up and think, I had a rough time. I'm not going to go to school.
Right.
Okay, because when we look and we see that you're there most of the time, we understand kids get sick from time to time. But if you haven't abused that, and we can see that you've had as close to near perfect attendance as you can, that's going to make the difference in us hiring you, particularly in construction, because when a contractor bids a job, it's all based on man hours,
right?
And it's based on the electricians being there and the carpenters and handing work off. And when somebody doesn't show up, that just throws a monkey wrench,
sure,
into the whole thing. So we really need someone who demonstrates some self-discipline. Again, that attendance record is what we look at very, very, very closely.
Now, I know with a lot of colleges, when they look at high schoolers coming in, they'll look at things like internships that they've done, volunteer work. Does that hold any weight with the skilled trades as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. Anything that even if it's cutting grass or something where they're working outside, for example, used to working in the elements. I talked about this isn't an easy profession to get into.
Right, right.
Today, it's a pretty nice day out there, 80 degrees, and but 4 months ago.
Sure.
Or maybe 2 months ago. It's a long winter.
Yesterday.
When it's 20 degrees
right.
and there's 5 inches of snow on the ground, and you got to go to work at 7 o'clock in the morning. It can be a tougher environment to work with. So you have to take that into account.
Are there any programs in place on the skilled trade side, and have you seen an influx of military veteran applying for these types of positions or education?
Yeah. We work with an organization called Helmets to Hard Hats.
Okay.
It's a federal organization.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah,
I like
it's
that
a nice name.
Yeah.
And it does exactly that. It tries to get transition folks from the military into construction because it is a natural fit.
Sure.
Particularly for heavy equipment operators, for example, who may be working over in Afghanistan or Iraq or wherever right now. Who have that type of experience. So yeah, we do try to facilitate. We put publications, we reach out all the time to the military, and we are seeing more veterans starting to apply.
And I imagine the punctuality, the drug-free,
where are you going to learn self-discipline better than the military?
Exactly. I mean, that's taken care of.
Yeah, that's a great resource for us. That's one thing too. We talk about punctuality. The job's basically 7 to 3:30 is the normal shift. Now, clearly there are times when you're going to be working longer shifts or maybe even double shifting depending on the job. But, when that means 7 o'clock, that doesn't mean showing up at 7 o'clock.
Right.
That means showing up at, 6:30, 6:45, and being at your work site at 7 o'clock with your tool belt on, ready to go to work. That doesn't mean just pulling into the parking lot at 7 o'clock. Those are the type of things that make a difference that we're looking for. But, going back to your last point about what can people do in terms of working, whether it's jobs or I mentioned grass cutting. I mean, there are also volunteer organizations that folks can get involved with. Rebuilding Together Pittsburgh is one. Habitat for Humanity is one. I mean, something again where demonstrates that you work outside. If you have any kind of construction-related experience, that's fine too. Because again, we're not just talking about kids. Again, we're talking people 30s or 40s that may have done something like this. I mean, any experience you have certainly applies to get you a better chance of getting into our programs.
With the skilled trades, is it pretty much? I remember back in the old days, 100 years ago, and you and I are about the same age. You go down to the union hall and, if there's a job available, they send you out. Does it still primarily work that way, or is it more now that you're working for a company, quote unquote?
It's a little bit of both. Most of the time you're working for a contractor, and as long as if you're doing a good job and that contractor's got work, he's going to take you from job to job to job. You may work for the same contractor for many years.
Okay.
But again, that contractor may not be successful in bidding on new Bethel Park High School, which was recently built, which was done by Mascaro Construction, a big contractor of ours. So when that happens, that's when you go back to the hall, put your name on the out of work list, and that's where the union, through this, through their signatory contractors, I mean, they will then send them to another contractor who does need their services, and they'll build their own reputation there as well. And if they're doing a good job, then they may stay with that contractor. So, yeah, you can go back to the union and to the hall and you put your name on the out of work list. But it's not just showing up in the morning and saying, hey, is there work today? I mean, it's pretty organized now, pretty sophisticated in terms of getting the workforce out to the job sites.
Now, you had mentioned earlier on there's a big difference between public and private unions. Can you expand on that a little bit? Because I know we hear a lot in the news, and again, with the news, a lot of it is sound bites, and you don't get the whole story. But you've actually been involved in the thick of it. What are some of the major differences between the two?
Well, I think, again, we tend to broad brush everything.
Sure.
And that was one of the reasons the Guild was formed, was to promote union construction and to try to fight the myth that union and has all sorts of issues and problems.
Right.
And that's not saying that unions are perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but the private sector unions are so much different in that, for example, when you work in the building trades, you don't get vacation. You don't get sick time. You don't get paid for holidays. You work 8 hours, you get paid for 8 hours.
Okay.
It's not like that with a lot of public sector unions, obviously. Okay. So it is a performance-driven unions. Again, now they're going to do things such as negotiate wages and benefits. But as far as a lot of the perks that folks associate with unions, it's not the way it is in the private sector. There's no seniority.
I would think diehard capitalists would love that system.
They should. That's why I say when there's no seniority, that can irk some members.
Sure.
But for newcomers, again, you work on your performance. So if you're 1 year in and someone's been there 20 years and the contractor says, hey, this guy is a tough, hardworking, young man or woman.
Right.
I want that person on my job site. You say, that's fine. I mean, because this kid has obviously proven that he has the ability. So it makes it somewhat competitive. It's a fellowship or brothership, sisterhood, what do you want to call it, brotherhood and sisterhood. But they also understand they need each other. They have to help each other out on the job site. So, but there's a huge difference between the building trade unions and teachers. And I'm not talking about teachers union, but it is a different set of standards that sort of drives, and terms and conditions of contracts that drive those. Okay,
fantastic. Now, I know you're the Builders Guild of Western Pennsylvania. I assume there's something in the East that's comparable, or?
That's why I say this is a very unique organization.
Oh, wow, okay.
You will not find really a Builders Guild anywhere else in the country. In fact, Jack Ramage, who's the head of the Master Builders Association, they're members of what's called the Associated General Contractors of America.
Okay.
So there are chapters of general contractors, and all the associations, the contractor associations, they have international groups, and the unions, of course, are part of internationals as well.
Sure.
But as far as where they've come together like they have here in Western Pennsylvania, I mean, Jack will tell you that a few months ago he was at one of his meetings with all of the chapter heads throughout the country, and he said, we sat around this table, and we each have to give a short report of what's happening in our districts. And he said, and I was listening to each chapter head, and they're talking about issues that we're having problems with labor and whatnot. And he says, and it came to me, and he said, I had to stand up, and I says, everything you've talked about here, we don't have any of that in Western Pennsylvania. Jack says, I can't tell you the last time a grievance came across my desk. It doesn't happen.
That's amazing.
It is an incredible relationship. As I said, we get together every month and we sit down and I think that's part of the reason why it is successful, is that, if you're going to fight with somebody, if you're going to knock heads all the time, that's easy to do when you don't see somebody too often.
Sure.
But if I know I'm going to see you next month, and the month after, and the month after, we need each other.
Right.
And we talk and we work these things through.
I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Jason. I find it very fascinating because that's an area that I don't really get involved with as deeply as some of the other areas that I cover. But it seems that, at least in Western Pennsylvania, we have a very unique system in place that is addressing a lot of the concerns that I spoke about in the beginning of the program, and at least in this area, there seems to be some forward progress. Hopefully, we can take this model and expand it throughout the country. It seems like it's working. It seems like a good model, and it seems through Jason and his leadership, along with many others that are involved, we have the right people in place to make something like this work. So we'll just keep pressing on, and remember, it's your future, your choice.